I'd like to call to order. Oh, go ahead. Sorry about that. I'd like to call to order the March 8th Joint City Council and Board of County Commissioners Workshop. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Just a reminder, please silence all cell phones if you don't mind. Thank you. And mute if they're on Zoom. The first thing we'll do is Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to do roll call. I'm Mayor Prieden, and I am present. Councilor Letts?
Here.
Councilor Ross?
Present.
Councilor Cobb?
Present.
Council President Blum, excuse me?
Here.
All right. And would you like to do yours?
Sure. Just quick introductions. We can do self-introductions. Commissioner Chang.
County Commissioner Phil Chang.
Commissioner.
Commissioner Patty Adair.
And Commissioner DeBone here. We have a quorum, sir.
All right, great. That's the introductions. And we introduced ourselves just now. So thank you very much. Next up is.
Let's just take a courtesy here. Good to see everybody. It's great to be here tonight. The weather's been threatening for the last few days, but it's just a beautiful drive here coming just now. So it's great to be here in Sisters and good to see everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I was out in Alfalfa today for a job interview. It was great. And it was nice being way out in the county. I hadn't been out there very much.
Yes, there you go. Good.
Appreciate it.
A lot of the county.
We have 5 items on the agenda and we have about an hour and a half. So we'll just kind of do the math. You can kind of figure out it's 15, 20 minutes. Some may go a little longer than others, but let's try and be at least somewhat mindful of our time so we can get through everything. Thank you. The first thing is update on Explorer Sisters. And I wanted to introduce the Executive Director, Scott Humpert. Please come on up. No. And Nancy Conley. Thank you very much.
Board member.
Board member. We don't have to say former counselor anymore?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
She would call her delighted citizen.
Delighted citizen.
Well, I like that.
Yes.
Well, welcome you guys.
Well, good evening. Thank you for having us, councilors, mayor, commissioners. Pleasure to be here. My name is Scott Humpert. I'm the executive director for the newly formed DMO here in Sisters, Explore Sisters. Give you a brief little rundown on my background. I know the council's already heard that, and just give you a quick update on what Explore Sisters has been up to over the last couple of months. I landed here December 15th from Lincoln City, where I spent the last 10 years helping run the DMO there. In Lincoln City, the DMO was part of the city, actually. So a little bit different structure, but same type of work. Was excited to hear the formation of a DMO here and the opportunity over in Central Oregon, and was happy to accept that position and move my family, my wife, 3 kids and 2 dogs over here, and bought a house, living here in Sisters. Kids are going to the schools and everybody's finally getting settled in after a couple of months. So it's been really nice to get to know the area. Part of what really set the tone for Explore Sisters was getting to meet the board during the interview process. We have a really strong board. Our chair is Greg Willits from Five Pines Lodge, Krista Monroe from Sisters Folk Festival, Casey Might from Blazing Saddles, Jesse Durham from Sisters Coffee. Nancy Connolly was a council-appointed representative, but she has since rolled off council and is now a citizen at large on our board.
Happy citizen.
That's right, happy citizen. Mayor Prieden is the new appointed council member on the board, and we just welcomed Victoria Graves from Three Creeks Brewing. And Carrie Prosser is the city-appointed staff liaison to the board. So, I'm sure you all kind of know what a DMO is. We use an acronym. The core acronym is DMO, so that used to stand for Destination Management or Marketing Organization. Now it's Destination Management Organization. And just a brief rundown on that, tourism is an economic development arm. We're driving economic activity is kind of at the core of what we do. And 5-10 years ago, the core of what we did was marketing and promotions. We were putting heads in beds and kind of inviting people in, washing our hands and saying good luck and going back to invite more people. Now it's more on the management side of things, which still includes the marketing piece, but it also folds in stewardship and sustainability of the destination. It includes product and experience development. So it's a broader look at the work that a DMO does. With stewardship, it has to do with responsible visitation, maintaining community livability, and that's kind of at the core in the DNA of what we do. Being a new organization, we don't have to walk back the marketing piece. That is who we are from day one. So that'll be demonstrated through our strategic planning and community involvement as we build this organization over the next couple of months. So what have we been up to? We've been busy over the last 2.5 months, working behind the scenes a lot, getting kind of the foundation set for the organization. The less romantic things like policies and procedures and budget forecasting and all of that type of stuff to really make sure we have a good playing field on which to work. I've spent probably half my time out in the community just meeting and greeting with number of businesses, with residents, with everyone, and still continue to do that. It's going to be a big part of what Explore Sisters does, is to meet and hear from the community. Working on 2 high priority projects that we've identified. One is our strategic planning, so that we're not reacting to the world around us. We have a plan, a roadmap, and a North Star. We've partnered with the University of Oregon Sustainable City Year program through their nonprofit management track, and they're really in the research and upload phase. Most of the core work is going to happen in the April, May timeframe, but by the end of June or so, we'll have a good solid business plan from which to work that will guide our work over the next couple of years. The other project we're working on is developing our brand and identity as an organization. We issued an RFP about a month ago. It just closed on the 3rd. We sent it to 20 agencies and individuals that specialize in marketing and brand development. We received 11 pretty strong responses. I haven't gone through all of them yet, but thumbed through them, and I think we'll be able to select a pretty good partner that can help guide that work for us. And where we're going to go in the next couple of months, that brand development is going to be huge because it's going to drive that marketing piece that we're working on. It's going to be the underpinnings of our ad campaigns, our website, all that type of stuff. We're going to come out of it with a logo, our identity, so our typefaces, our tone, our voice, our mission. We'll come out with guidelines on how to use the brand, ways that we can implement it. And then we'll start developing those marketing assets, the website, email marketing, social media, advertising campaigns, public relations, earned media, and really start to get that rolling. I don't want to invest a ton of money in that advertising until we have a strategy to do so that we're not just throwing money at things for the sake of having an ad, but that we're doing it intentionally. We also need to look at research and where we have gaps. We're going to rely on our state and regional DMO partners for some of that high-level research that's already been done, but there might be some specific things that we need to bring that is more sisters-centric, such as a visitor profile, local economic data, hotel data, sentiment data, and that'll be one to drive our work, but two to also kind of keep track on how we're doing. Those are our performance indicators. So it'll be a collective of information that drives what we do. We're also going to look towards how do we increase our own capacity. Right now, I'm a staff of 1. You can only do so much with your staff being 1. So I'd love to look at adding another staff person down the road, whether that's help with marketing or program development, things like that. But we need to look at other funding sources that might be sustainable outside of grants, because I've been a casualty of grant funding in the past. When the grant goes away, so does the capacity. So I want to make sure that it's sustainable funding when it comes to staffing. Speaking of grants, we're going to look at grants from 2 angles. One, grants that can help Explore Sisters do its work, but also that we can provide to our partners. Sometimes there's tourism-specific grants that DMOs have access to that they can apply for on behalf of a partner that can do the work, such as doing a trail development project or something like that, where we don't have the capacity to be boots on the ground, but we can partner with somebody that can be, and maybe we have access to those grants. So bringing in that extra income into the city, the sisters community through our partners is going to be a key angle on where we identify grants, and that's anywhere from Travel Oregon. Visit Central Oregon just opened up a Future Fund grant program that it's going to be an annual thing, and it just closed. But there's going to be opportunities to bring additional dollars in to make our budget box above its weight a little bit. So that's in a nutshell what we've been up to and where we're going, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
All right, thanks, Scott. I want to say one thing about what Scott's been doing since he got here, is he talked about meeting with business owners a lot over the last 2 months, but he's done a lot more than that. He's been knocking around with community stakeholders, some of the people in town that have been here a long time, fire chief, the ranger, Ian Reed, and other people like that that have deep, deep roots into the community and that are basically some of the biggest people in town because they're just, they run some of the big organizations. So it's not just meeting business owners, it's actually getting in with the people that are the movers and shakers, essentially, and some of our biggest partners that we all need, no matter what we're doing, whether it's DMO work or parks or whatever. You can name 1,000 things that they're integrated in. So I wanted to thank you for doing that because it just shows that it just shows you know what you're doing, I guess is the best thing to say. Does anybody have any questions for Scott?
Is this a membership organization or is it fully funded by the city or what's?
It's not a membership organization. We're, at this point, we're solely funded by the TLT from the city. We get about 30% of that. But you know, we won't be membership, but we represent the community as a whole from a high level. So yeah, we won't be a membership organization.
Yeah, just wondering. And then relationship with the Chamber of Commerce. That's where, I kind of got to the membership concept here. So I know that this is an area that Chamber is always working in and promoting. So any thoughts on that? Or hopefully it's a great relationship. And then the other end of it, that's the Chamber internally to the city, but, Visit Central Oregon, the regional DMO, because they're, their office is Sun River, but it really is for the Central Oregon area for sure.
Yeah, and those are part of the stakeholders that we've met with. We've met with Visit Central Oregon early on. We met with the chamber a couple of weeks back. Last week we met with Visit Bend, and all those conversations they went well, and it was about cooperative efforts. And when it comes to working with the chamber, it's looking how we can leverage their business to business connections and not duplicate our efforts. We both have limited budgets. We're going to operate in the tourism space, but we hope that we can find ways to collaborate and work together to do good for the sisters community and kind of stay in our tourism, but they might have some good work that we can piggyback on.
And then, so we helped, fund the Sisters Chamber on an ask recently, and then they were asking for another set of dollars there too. So it's good communication between all of us can make sure we're doing the right thing here.
I have a question, Scott. You said you have 3 children. I'm hoping that they moved over here successfully.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of dogs do you have, and have they adjusted okay?
Important.
'Cause, I
It's
mean,
important.
And how many horses?
They're both mutts. They're both rescue dogs. One is a lab pit mix, and then the other one is, we're not quite sure what he is. We know that he's not smart for one, but they sold him as a lab Doberman, but I think there's some Weimaraner in him too, just because of the coloring and kind of his skeletal structure. But they're both adjusting fine. They still have a pretty big yard to go run around in, and I don't think maybe they saw snow once over in Lincoln City, but they've been out playing in the snow and barking at the dogs on the other side of fences that we have all around us. And now everybody's adjusted really well, and the kids are loving the schools, and family's doing good.
oh, good.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to add that, the council and the city went the direction of a full DMO because we really saw the need, and we were hearing this strongly from the community that, we love sisters and we love sharing sisters with visitors, but we don't want it to get trashed. We don't want all of our great resources and our community to be overrun. And we felt, an organization that could really take on the bigger picture, like Scott really said eloquently, and take a more sustainable look at it and approach was just kind of the perfect fit for us right now. We are very cognizant of good and bad things that have happened in other communities around tourism. And so, we're trying to learn from other people's mistakes and move forward in a very direct manner. So we're really excited about the future with this organization.
Welcome, Scott.
Thank you.
I'm envious of your opportunity to promote and steward this wonderful community. My question is, my question is about shoulder and slow seasons. I mean, it is a significant concern for the Sisters tourism sector. And I'm just curious, coming in fresh eyes, being here for a little while now, do you have any initial thoughts on, what the ideal strategies are to work on shoulder and slow season?
Yeah, and that's something that'll really be fleshed out in our strategic planning, so that we can have that kind of roadmap to everything. And coming from Lincoln City, we had, similar problems where, we're a town of 10,000 full-time residents, but in the summer, it just balloons to 30,000 people. And, you know, when we talk about the marketing and advertising we're doing, it's going to be with intent. So we're not just stacking more people on top of people in the summer. It's going to be looking at those seasons of need, and the kind of the low hanging fruit when it comes to where do we initially invest in. It's probably not going to be that heavy lift in the off season. It'll probably be in the shoulder seasons initially, to really make our marketing dollars and our awareness go as far as it can. But, looking at things like, really promoting the types of outdoor recreation people can do during those times, and, pushing events and encouraging new events to happen in those shoulders and off seasons. So exactly what that looks like, I'm not sure yet, but it's definitely going to be a priority to make sure that's part of the stewardship, sustainable livability piece of it, is to make sure that we're not overwhelming the community, and that we are intentionally targeting people to come during those times of need to where we can, in Lincoln City, it was a big struggle to keep businesses open in the winter, and to keep staffing stable. And if you can really stretch, we started to see that as we tracked some data in Lincoln City, where it used to kind of come to a peak in the summer, or in the middle of the summer, and then we started to see it stretch out to kind of plateau. So we were seeing growth in those more shoulder seasons, and that's kind of what I would look to do here too, and see who we can partner with. Certainly, I think our strong suit's going to be the targeted promotion marketing side of things, but we have to have something to market. So that's the experiences, the events, the product that we have here in town.
Yeah, and then sort of an inverse question for peak season. Uh, what kind of experience do you have dealing with smoke and fire?
Oddly enough, I was evacuated from a wildfire because we had the Echo Mountain Complex fire just outside of Lincoln City, and it was a nightmare. The city was not prepared for it. One thing that we did as the DMO is that we basically shut down everything we did, except for we acted as a information conduit. So either it was informing visitors to kind of let us stay away for the time being, or it was communicating with locals, being an extension of emergency services or city services. And so we went into kind of that crisis communication mode. And I imagine if a similar situation were to happen here, we'd take a similar approach, and really pivot into helping support the community, and even looking, long-term at the recovery. We worked we weren't the sole person, but we worked with a couple hotels that were converted into long-term housing because their houses burnt, in Rose Lodge and Otis. And so there were a couple hotels that were converted into housing. And that obviously impacted our budget because the TLT went down, but it was the right thing to do by the community to support. That's our workforce that lived out in that area. And to see them, challenged, like if that workforce goes away, the businesses go away, the visitor experience is degraded. And so it's just kind of this trickle down effect. So I would imagine we'd take a similar approach and go into communication mode to really help where we can.
Sounds like you're well prepared to deal with the immediate and long-term impacts.
I'd like to add that he came with the most essential skill for sisters in the summertime living in Lincoln City, which is you turn right to go left.
Absolutely. Yep.
Definitely, that's true.
I just wanted to add in that the board makeup is very key to the success of Explore Sisters. And as Scott told you, our board members have a long-term history. And they live here. They're not out-of-state people who have a hotel here. They're true residents who value the livability, who understand what can happen if things go sideways. And so the pressure is not on Scott we have to have every hotel room filled every night of every day of every month of the whole year. it's a livability piece because city council historically has addressed the livability issues with the limits on short-term rentals, with putting the roundabouts in, with, help me out here, what else did you guys do? We took a lot of proactive steps. And so the DMO was the last of that piece dealing with livability. And, I represent not a business entity, but I am a resident that lives in the city who cares passionately about it. And that's why I am on the board. So I bring that livability piece along with the other entities that bring the business side of the coin. So I think we have a really well-rounded board. I think our vision as we progress and as we mature, and we have, more than 2 months and 2 board meetings under our belt, that you'll see good progress made in the management piece. And I think the second day Scott had on the job, we met with the Forest Service. We had a great meeting with them. We found out places that they said, don't ever mention this place. Don't mention, not Sisters, but this place in the Forest Service. We met with the Upper Deschutes Watershed Council that said, don't mention this place. And we honor that because they know the parameters, the overuse of those areas. And we don't want to add to the demise of the beauty here. We want to make it sustainable and long-term vision for the city and the residents. So that's my piece.
And I'd like to say that Nancy was on council for 7 or 8 years, and one of the things that we tried to set up this organization for success is through the event code and limiting citywide events in the summertime to spread things out naturally just through our code. But obviously, the nuance is all going to come from Explore Sisters. Code is rigid, it's impersonal, but Explore Sisters is going to do all the hard work, which is the brush strokes and the marketing side of it. So, but the great thing is now that we have this organization, we have representation of council there on the board. If we need to change event code, they're going to be the people that are going to be able to inform us, hey, this is not working or this is working. And so the relationship's going to be absolutely key over the next 2 or 3 years. Go ahead, Gary.
And I would say that when we discussed the whole concept of a DMO, one thing that was important to this council was to basically divorce the process from the city, get it set up, get it going, and then boot them out the door, and nicely. And I think we also felt very strongly that we wanted an organization that was the only thing they were going to do, that they didn't have other important duties to do that didn't conflict, but did kind of divide the attention. So we thought it very important if we're really going to look at this long-term and how do we try to maintain livability in our city and still maintain our businesses, that we needed to have an organization where that was the sole focus. And I think we've done okay so far. Give me a week.
All right, everybody good? Any last questions? All right, thank you, Scott. Thank you, Nancy, very much.
Thank you, guys.
Very good update. All right, item B, the Landfill Siting and Recycle Modernization Act update.
Got the professionals coming to the table right now.
We do. We have Chad Santola, our Director of Solid Waste, and Tim Brunel, our incoming Director of Solid Waste, and I'll let them share with you why we have 2 directors. I'll turn it over to Chad.
Thank you, Nick. Good evening, councilors.
Oh, hold on one second.
Just 1 second.
Oh.
If people can pull their mics very close to them, I had a couple of times where it was hard to hear folks who are softer talkers. That would be great. Thank you.
How's this?
Oh,
It sounds good. Thank you, Nick. Good evening, councilors and commissioners. I'm Chad Santola, Director of Solid Waste. I will be retiring in just under 4 months after a 25-year career with Deschutes County Solid Waste Department. And we've been very fortunate to be able to have a overlap with an incoming director, and I'll let Tim introduce himself here in a minute. We have a lot of major projects and changes going on in the solid waste department, and it was really critical to get a longer handoff rather than the typical 4 to 6 weeks between the directors here. Tim and I have been working together and joined at the hips for how long now?
About 10 months.
So we'll have about 14 months working side by side before I depart here. So if you want to introduce yourself.
I will.
Okay. If you go to the next slide, please. So I had mentioned we have a number of substantial projects we're working on it with, in the county. The two ones I wanted to talk with you tonight about is the siting of a new solid waste management facility, and Tim's going to talk about the Oregon Recycling Modernization Act. These will have impacts countywide, including the city of Sisters. Next slide. So back in 2019, the county updated its solid waste management plan, and it was somewhat driven by the fact that not landfills could be reaching capacity in November of 2029. The plan looked at a number of other things, including recycling and other aspects of solid waste management, our infrastructure, things like that. But one of the major focuses was what happens when not landfill reaches capacity in 2029. The outcome of that was the plan identified the alternative of siting a new landfill within the county. That prevailed over a couple of other approaches. We took a look at alternative technologies. Example would be the Covanta Waste Energy Facility out in the Willamette Valley. Believe it or not, in spite of all the growth in the county, we do not generate enough waste in Deschutes County to make a waste energy facility practical. Those are typically done by private developers. They'll put the infrastructure in, they expect to get a return on it. We just can't produce enough electricity with the amount of waste we generate in the county. So that fell off the table. We looked at other technologies that are out there. None of them are really on an industrial scale at this point, but we're continuing to monitor the developments with those. The other alternative we looked at was doing long haul of our waste to one of the large regional landfills on the Columbia Gorge. Just the sheer logistics of trying to move waste that far, winter road conditions, greenhouse gas impacts from internal combustion engines, it was pretty substantial. And also with costs associated with moving waste that far. Ultimately, the decision was made by the Solid Waste Management Advisory Committee and to site a new facility in Deschutes County. So one of the points to mention there, during the development of the solid waste management plan, we had several informal surveys with the community, getting their input, what they would expect and like to see in the county. And we also retained the services of a professional polling firm to do a more scientific survey. And it was pretty substantial support, 80% or better with all the surveys that were done, that a facility should be sited within the county. You know, the philosophy of taking our environmental issues and moving them to somebody else's county just does not make sense. So ultimately, the support was there within the community to do a facility in the county. So next slide. General criteria for the facility, ideally about 30 miles from a not landfill. That's essentially the centroid of waste generation in the county. We decided on a 500 acre minimum size. The landfill itself would be 250 acres. And if we had neighbors other than publicly owned property, we wanted to have at least a 250 acre buffer between us and neighbors. If you've ever been to not landfill, we have neighbors literally right over the fence from us, and that's a challenging environment to operate in. So we wanted to make sure we gave ourselves enough space. The capacity for the facility, we've decided at 100 years, which is pretty typical for a public agency landfill. The large regional landfills have hundreds of years of capacity, but the capital investment to do something like that does not really make sense for a public agency. One of the comments that my predecessor, Tim Shimke, would make often was that this could very well be the last landfill site of the county. Even though we're looking at 100 years of capacity, that could be capacity for a lot longer as recycling develops, waste stream diversion, it probably would stretch out the capacity quite a bit. Talking a little bit about the dollars, these are the numbers from our 2019 excuse me, solid waste management plan estimate, about $14 million. I get a quick shot of water here. About $14 million for siting, permitting, and initial construction. Assuming about a 30-mile haul distance, the rate increases back in 2029 would be about a 20% increase over what is currently paid in Deschutes County. We enjoy some of the lowest tipping fees in the state of Oregon. If you live in the Portland area, for what costs $12 in not landfill is $50, $60, $70 or more. So it's been a goal of the department to try to keep our rates down. And I think the 20% increase is pretty modest for what we're looking at doing. Next slide. one more, there we go. So at the start of this effort, right when we finished the solid waste management plan, we had an internal committee of people from various departments in the county that did the initial look at where we could go with the landfill. And what we looked at primarily was private and publicly owned land exclusive of federal land and parcels of 500 acres or more. So this map, excuse me, this map has 206 parcels identified on it. So that was as far as the internal staff of the county went with identifying potential locations. It was important for us to look countywide. We wanted to make sure we looked at every opportunity we had for siting a facility. Next slide. So once we went through a rather extensive process, and I will say in my entire career that the hiring of our consultants, parametrics for this project was probably the most detailed and an extensive process of hiring I've done in my time. So with parametrics, the first step in the process we did with them was identify areas in the county where we could not go. Federal landfill siting rules have a number of criteria where you cannot put a landfill, certain types of wetlands, seismic history, unstable slopes, things like that. There's also some restrictions on airports. So those were added to it. The three large areas, pink areas you see in the southeast corner of the county, that's a sage-grouse core habitat. That's a no-go under federal guidelines. Up in the upper northwest corner of the county is the Metolius watershed, so that was a no-go area. See the Central Oregon Badlands, the incorporated city limits. So these were areas we couldn't go to, so that dropped a number of those 204 sites that we'd identified earlier on. So next slide. What we came up with was 39 potential sites. And what we started at that process was what we called our broad screen analysis. We have about 75 criteria ranging from engineering, environmental, and zoning criteria for scoring these sites. So at the start, we had the 31 sites identified here. A lot of them are private property. We reached out to property owners to see whether they were interested in participating with us. Next slide, Carrie. So this is what we ended up with after that process. Some of these were dropped. There were private property owners that were not interested in working with us. They had plans for their property. The sites down around the Lapine area, shallow groundwater, that's a pretty critical criteria for landfill siting. I will say most of Deschutes County, we do enjoy the fact that groundwater is so deep. In a landfill environment, that is a really valuable asset to have for protection of groundwater. We lost a number of sites for various what we call practical flaws. Although the parcels were 250 acres or larger, when we looked at them in more detail, there was just not enough developable area on them. One of the things I want to mention that the stage of evaluation we're doing now is primarily using GIS technology and other resources like that. The regulatory agencies have a lot of good GIS information available to us, and that assisted us greatly with the process. So at this point, we have not actually been on the ground on most of the sites on the list right now. So there were three sites, and you may have heard this on the news recently. So the federal rules have criteria on how close you can put a landfill to an airport. For a propeller airport is 5,000 feet. For a jet airport is 10,000 feet. The FAA has an advisory, a recommendation, not a requirement, that you keep landfills 5 miles or more from airports. The bird strike hazard is the issue there. We conferred with the FAA and met with representatives from the Redmond Airport and Sisters Airport, and ultimately we all came to the consensus that we would respect that 5-mile radius. So 2 sites in the Bend area and 1 site up in Redmond by our transfer station up there were dropped off the list as well. So on this map, that left us with a total of 6 sites, and that's where we stand today with our list. Next slide. There is one thing that Commissioner Chang is working on with us regarding possibly acquiring BLM land. Before I became director, this was probably about 4 years ago, the former county administrator and my predecessor met with the BLM to talk about acquiring BLM property. There's a federal act that facilitates the BLM transferring property to public agencies for public benefit. And if you look on the map, you can see a smattering of pink parcels on there. Those are properties that the BLM has identified for disposal. That doesn't necessarily mean making it a landfill, but it's just it's land that the BLM has identified they would happily pass on to a public agency. Those properties in the county were either too small or just not properly configured for what we needed. So at that meeting 4 years ago, the county walked out thinking, well, the BLM land wasn't going to be an option for us. Another factor is how long that process takes to transfer